Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty good show for you here today. It's midweek, and you know what that means. That means I got my guy, Ryan Lankford, the official Format Podcast college football analyst, joining me to talk all things college football, mainly this past weekend and the weekend to come. So stick around for that one. But before we do that and you're here on YouTube, you already know what time it is. If you haven't already, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell so you can be made aware whenever new content drops on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come right up. Please, if you're enjoying the content, give us that 5-star review, leave us a like, and go ahead, leave us that comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Me and Ryan Lankford, college football. Let's go. Here we are with my main man, Ryan Lankford. And of course, he's going to come talk to us about college football as he is the Format Podcast official college football analyst, former Fighting Illini, former Indianapolis Colt, former Ottawa Red Black, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber, and former Saskatchewan Rough Rider. Ryan, what's going on, my brother?
Man, doing, living life, living life. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'm doing all right and excited to get to this college football talk with you as always, man.
Always.
All right, let's get to it. So, um, it seems like every week we do this, but of course, we got to start with the biggest story of this college football season, and that's the Colorado Buffaloes. Now, this one here, I tell you what, and we're gonna kind of get into the weeds a little bit on this and what's happening and why, but man, so Colorado last week played on Friday night, which
hmm
Friday night's traditionally reserved, and you know this much better than I do as high school football night. But
hmm
we get some of the games in college on Friday nights now, and Dion and his Buffaloes took on Stanford this past weekend, and I think it had like a 10 o'clock kickoff on the East Coast. So,
Yeah,
a lot of
late.
people on the East Coast only saw like the first half of this game. And, it was one of those on the schedule I had circled as pretty much a guaranteed, well, not guaranteed, but, a fully expected win for
hmm
Colorado,
hmm
on their way to getting to that 6 wins and hopefully getting a bowl berth this year.
hmm
But
hmm
so you watch the first half, Colorado's up 29-0, and you're thinking, all right, I think it's safe to go to bed now. And
You're
you
right.
wake up in the morning and an absolutely historic meltdown slash choke job, whatever you want to call it, uh,
hmm
from the Buffaloes. I mean, game ends up going into double overtime, and Stanford wins this thing 46-43. Stanford is not a very good football team this year, and you wonder, how did this happen? So I'm going to ask you, Ryan, how did this happen?
Yeah, there's no real answer to it, right? It is just a big letdown in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people drop the ball, literally. Coaches
Yeah.
drop the ball,
Right.
offenses drop the ball, and they just to allow someone to kind of sneak back up on you like that is
Mhm,
you never like seeing that. When you put the game away, you got to keep them away,
mhm.
run the ball, get them, wear them down, and have your defense hold up and finish the job.
So you got to wonder, like, what was Colorado's coaching staff thinking as they're watching? We like to call it Big Mo, momentum
hmm
really go in that second half on the side of the Cardinals and just take that game over, because you're wondering at what point do the adjustments take place? At what point does Stanford do something here to kind of stop the tide? And I
hmm
know you'll love Alec Iomanor, the star receiver for the Cardinals, set a school record with 294 receiving yards on 13 catches,
Which was
including the
crazy.
one super highlight where he pretty much mossed Travis Hunter
Yep.
and took it literally off of his back to score the touchdown. So first, what did you think of Alec Iomanor's play that night? Obviously, I thought it
hmm
was incredible, but from a wide receiver's perspective, and second, what do you think? At what point does the coaching staff say, "Hey, we got to do something here. We got to change something up"?
Yeah, well, number one, I think he had an incredible game. That's the game you dream about doing. That's the game that every receiver knows they're capable of having, but that game never ever ever happens. You never get that point,
Right.
to really come through and really make plays. And once you're hot, it's a great feeling when you know that your coach and your quarterback sees that you're hot, and they're
Mhm.
going to keep trying to get you the ball and keep drawing up the play. So that was a cool thing to see. And I guess from Colorado's standpoint, it's just an unfortunate situation to kind of give up a lead like that, especially when you already know that the naysayers and the doubters are out there.
Mhm.
Good teams, I should say, the great teams don't allow those type of things to happen. But hopefully, the coaching staff is able to rebound, the players are able to rebound, and this can be a great learning lesson for them because you know football is a tough game,
Mhm.
and you got to be on your p's and q's at all times. If there's time on the clock, there's still plenty of time to win the game. So
Right.
we saw that firsthand.
So I'm watching this thing, and I'm no great X's and O's guys, but I'm seeing Stanford running this deep post over and over and over, same
Hmm.
play, and I'm like,
Hmm.
at what point, if I'm Colorado, am I doing something different defensively? Like what? I, it's almost like they were trying to throw all out zero blitzes or something because you
Yeah,
didn't see
yeah.
much help over the top. And Travis Hunter just coming back off a major injury. He couldn't be in his top shape. Yeah, he's your
Hmm.
number one cover corner guy, but he couldn't be in top shape. And he's getting burned on this play over and over. Where's the safety help over the top? What is going on? From your
Yeah.
perspective as a wide receiver, Ryan, what did you see there?
They weren't making their adjustments. Now again, I can't take away from the receivers play because he's balling. I mean, he's catching the ball off people's back. He's going up making plays.
Yeah.
He's doing what he needs to do, and he's got an O line that's blocking. He's got a running back that's going through the right read, checking and blocking and doing things too. So it is a group effort, but um, Colorado really took their foot off the gas.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with the coaches, but ultimately the players got to make plays. And someone on that defense has had to have better football IQ and say, hey, man, listen, we can't give up the big play. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot give up the big play, even if we got to let them chunk it, chunk it, chunk it, chunk it all the way down the field so we get
Mm-hmm.
tight in the red zone. We can't give up the big play. And that's what was hurting them.
Let me ask you this, and this is going to sound bad, but is there ever a time in a situation like that where one of the defenders says, "Man, listen, I'm gonna take one for the team and rock this guy," as he's coming through that part of the field and make him know like it's not going to be
Yeah.
that sweet every time? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously you want to keep it within the bounds of play, but
Hmm.
football is a physical game to that
Hmm.
point. And do you think that there's some times where some situations where somebody defensively's got to say, look, man,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I think you got to kind of have that moment. However, that moment has really phased out of football, I would say, just in the
mm,
last years with just, when targeting has became more of a rule where actually kids are getting thrown out for games now for tackling.
mm-hmm,
That was usually just the rare situation that the play was just absurd and he has
mm-hmm,
to be thrown out. But now you're seeing guys getting thrown out for fundamental stuff just because it's a bang bang play or a receiver shorter than the DB. So there's a lot of different things that come
mm-hmm,
in. And as much as you want to be that guy to say, "Hey, let's set the record straight. I'm not going to play the ball. I'm going to play the player on this next
mm-hmm,
play to kind of set the tone."
right.
We're phasing out of that football. I think we're a
Okay.
lot more focused on player safety and player hopefully future development. So those kind of I would say emotionally charged plays, we don't see as much.
Right. So let me digress for a quick moment. Again, you as a wide
Hmm.
receiver, and you actually mentioned this. This is something I lament in the way modern game of football is officiated. So you're a wide receiver. What are you, about 6 feet, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So let's just say you get a big safety, and you're coming across the middle, and you catch it. The safety now or the linebacker has you lined up, sized up perfectly, right? Perfect
Hmm.
tackling form, got your strike
Hmm.
zone right between, between your neck and your waist. Perfect.
Hmm.
And you see him coming across. So of course, you shrink up to absorb the hit, right?
Hmm.
So now
Hmm.
he's already on his trajectory to hit you where he's supposed to as the
Hmm.
defender, but what? Physics now, he can't change his target point, right?
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
can't change that when you shrink up. and he ends up hitting you a little high and gets called
Hmm.
for, the targeting. How do you feel about that? Because as a fan, it drives me absolutely crazy. Like, I get it, it's bang bang plays, and I get it, we're calling things or officiating on the side of safety, but at the same time, you can't totally handcuff the defender like that, can you?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
physics just dictate that at a certain point he can't change where he's going to hit you.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
and I think and I'm with you with that because I am pro receiver, pro offense. I'm also
Mm-hmm.
pro player safety at the
Yeah.
same time. But I'm also pro competitor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this game is about that. And I think I wish there was more kind of referee judgment on the spot, kind of play by play situation. Like, okay, like he did kind of duck down because the ball was low,
Mm-hmm.
had like, kind of play a little bit like that
Right.
and
Right.
not be so quick to throw guys out. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. Don't be so quick to say targeting, he's got to go.
Right.
That in my mind targeting used to be more of a intention
Mm-hmm.
behind it.
Yeah.
Now a lot of times it's turning into, well, the helmet actually did kind of touch his helmet, so that targeting, but you can see in his intention he wasn't trying to hit him with the crown of the helmet. It just
Right.
happened because of that bang bang situation. Guy turns
Mm-hmm.
down, guy does whatever. So um I don't know if there's an exact way to correct it, but it
Yeah.
is definitely a different game now that
Yeah.
players are getting thrown out a lot more fluidly than in the past, I would say.
Right. Okay, so let's get back to Colorado. So do you think some of their recent difficulty in some of these games, do you think that the players maybe have read too much of their own press clippings or maybe buying into the hype a little too much? Because a guy like Dion, one thing about him, he was all about the hype, but he knew how to
Hmm.
back it up. And him
Hmm.
as a coach, obviously he can't be out there with his
Right.
players, proving this, but and I'm sure he's talked to them about it, but there's still a bunch of young men still learning. Do you think that that's part of some of the difficulties that they're having is buying into the hype and reading the press clippings?
Yes and no. Because again, remember he's coming in from this is prime time. Who you said like again he's been this guy from draft day to
Mm-hmm.
everything. He even at Florida State he's been this guy, and now you're coming to a program where uh historically
Mm-hmm.
they've not been that guy. They've not been this larger than life character. So even though that your coach is that, is going to bring on a lot of extra pressure to you as a player. So I think naturally the locker room and the players are going to have to adjust to that, and they will when they get used to now we're going to be big time football. We got Dion, we're bringing recruits in, we're making plays. We're going to be um, a team that can hopefully stand for a while. Now, I don't think that they have done enough to, how could I say this? Like this, I don't think this game is something to be like, uh-oh, be so super duper worried about, right? Every coach, every player, everyone has that one fluke game that at the end of their career, nobody remembers, but in the moment you
Mm-hmm.
remember, right?
Right.
And let's also not forget that Colorado's done more than enough than what they were supposed to be doing
Mm-hmm.
compared to last year. So everything at this point is more buying into the hype of Dion and
Mm-hmm.
expectations and just icing on top of the cake that they've already built pretty well
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
first year out.
Do you think that this is an indictment of Dion in any way? We know that this is a guy who's had success in everything he's endeavored to do in his life, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of people who want to see him fail at this particular thing. Do you think this is an indictment? I don't, but I'm sure some
Yeah,
people will look for a reason to say that it is.
I don't think so. I mean, I think people are always going to try to find something to say about you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Dion hasn't coached 10 games at Colorado yet. Like you can count on one hand how many, two hands
Right.
maximum, how many games
Mm-hmm.
he's played. So
Right.
there's so much time for him to turn this around.
Mm-hmm.
And you need these type of moments to use this as a lesson, to use this as a coaching point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost better that something like this happens early,
Right.
rather than later.
Right. Fair enough. Okay, well, let's move on from the Buffaloes and let's get to
Hmm.
what I think most people would agree was the game of the weekend and maybe one of the best games so far this season, and if not the best game, and that's Washington versus Oregon. Boy,
Right.
I tell you what, there was times watching this thing that I thought that Washington was getting ready to run away with it, but it's testament to the program that Dan Lanning's built there in Oregon and the way
Hmm.
that they play football that it never actually got away from the Huskies, and they actually had to, Michael Penix Jr. had to have a game-winning drive at the end to win the thing, and so
Hmm.
the Huskies come out on top, 36-33. I guess kind of where I want to go with this. They looked super evenly matched out there. Um,
Yeah.
did you see any large difference between these two teams? And if so, what was it?
Um, I really didn't. I do think that I undervalued Penix. I
Mm,
definitely thought that his accuracy wasn't as great as it could have been. I think his receivers were bailing him out on a lot of stuff
hmm,
earlier in the season.
okay.
After this game and
Mhm,
after watching some of his games as of late, they're really playing really good football.
mhm,
He is a talented player. He has the
mhm,
ability to read the field, make good throws, make touch on throws, which is important, right? It's much more than just being able to put the ball in the right place. If you can put the
mhm.
ball in the right place with the right pace,
Yeah.
that's where the game breaker happens, right? And I think
Hmm.
that he's really doing a great job. And that was cool for me to see, for
Hmm.
me to kind of look back and go, okay, yeah, he has stepped up. They're getting better, and they're going to continue to get better, which is exciting to see. So, um, he's a good player.
I think he's an outstanding player, and I'm not into the gambling thing, but most of the odds makers have him in the lead with the highest odds to win the Heisman this
Hmm.
year, and I definitely think he's in the lead now. Now, don't get me wrong; he's still got some tough games remaining. He's got Wazoo, he's got Oregon State. I think they also have
Hmm.
Utah. Man, that Pac-12 is really going to cannibalize itself. This is going to be really
Hmm.
interesting down the stretch. But Michael Penix Jr., I think he's just amazing. And what were your thoughts on that final drive and how easy he made it look. Just going right down the field like a knife through hot
Professional.
butter. Yeah.
Professional. And you, I said we because but because I've been there, but you
Yeah.
practice that, right?
Hmm.
So either it's towards the end of practice or it's at the midday before the break, but you practice 2 minute, you practice final drive, where you come out there, they say, all right, we got the ones on ones, we're gonna go ones on twos. All right, you gotta go 80 yards and kick a field goal. We
Okay.
got 36 seconds left. You gotta go
Mm.
here and get a touchdown. So now you're thinking like, okay, this is where we're at. What do we
Hmm.
do? How many timeouts do we have left?
Hmm.
Balls here, da 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 da. So you practice those things so that when the game happens, you're like, oh, we got a minute. Oh, that's nothing. We did 25 seconds on Thursday before we broke camp. Like so, um, those practices and when you're able to kind of pull it all together when you get into the game like that is why it's so special.
So Michael Penix Jr., we're still talking about Michael Penix Jr. just because he's that good, but he's been
Right.
with Kalen DeBoer since he was at Indiana before transferring to Washington. Let me ask you this: how much does it
Mm-hmm.
mean to have that level of comfort in his system and to be that familiar and that connected with a play caller
Mm-hmm.
and a coach, whether you're on
Mm-hmm.
the offensive or defensive side of the field for so
Mm-hmm.
many years? What does that
Mm-hmm.
mean, and how much does that really help you because we always hear about, guys, first, second, third year in the system. Tell me a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about that and what it means.
It's a game changer. That first year is a lot harder than that second year and that third year and that fourth year because you build that camaraderie, you build the understanding of how the playbook works, how they call it, why we run plays, how we run them, and things like that. So
Mhm,
the longer that you're with somebody, you establish that trust and you learn the system where you're not playing or you're not thinking, you're just
mhm.
playing, right?
Okay.
When you're out there thinking, you're not playing as fast as if you're just reacting.
Mhm.
So when you're in a situation where you know playbook and you know what to call, you know your read, you know all your stuff, you're just playing the game. And I think that's what's coming through for them now, and it's always a great situation when you're able to know something that you've had before and just keep building on it.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, just I'll tell you again, I was so impressed with that game. So
Hmm.
let me ask you this. Kind of flipping to the Oregon side here.
Hmm.
Bo Nix, what do you think of Bo Nix? Because I've never been particularly impressed with him. but he
Mm-hmm.
seems to be one of the guys that is thought very highly of in terms of this year
Mm-hmm.
being an elite quarterback class, etc. He acquitted himself very well in this game. Didn't turn the football over.
Mm-hmm.
Threw 33 for 44 for 337 and two touchdowns. Played well. What are your thoughts on Bo Nix? Where are you on him,
Mm-hmm.
especially in terms of what you think he'll be able to do at the next level?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wasn't very high on him.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I'm a little higher than I was. I'm not completely sold and say
Yeah.
that he's, the Messiah or the one and only, the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
But he's a great player. I think age comes into a factor.
That's
He
true.
is considered a veteran, if you will, in the
Mm-hmm.
college level. So I am interested to see what that transition will look like from the college football to the NFL, and
Mm-hmm.
how he can make the transition of learning a new system in a new game and just trying to develop the new version of him in the NFL.
Right.
But personally, I think he's a good player. I think he leads the offense well. But I think his age is definitely helping him and giving him the extra maturity that's allowing him to make plays.
Yeah, I can see that. And we'll get to another guy. I think he's tied with Sam Hartman at Notre Dame for most
Yeah.
career starts currently. I think they're both at like 53 or 54 career starts. So crazy.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so before we move on from this one, which was again a great Pac-12 showdown, do you see any chance now that you've seen these guys a little more and you've seen them both against high level competition? What
Hmm.
would you say their chances are if they get into the college football playoff of winning a championship?
Um,
Because at the end
I
of the day, that's
don't.
what it's all
It,
about, right?
Right, and it depends who they're gonna go against, right? And
Right,
then it
right.
and then it comes up to, okay, well, you know, they go against Georgia. Would they be able to win physically? Would they be able to go against any of these teams that are in the SEC, or would they be able to, whoever, if Ohio State
Michigan,
makes it, or
right, right.
Michigan, or somebody else makes it, would they be able to transition um, into that? Now, I don't know if they can win. I definitely
Mm-hmm.
know that both teams are competing
Yeah,
for a chance in the dance. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
think that
yeah,
they both
absolutely.
have the caliber to compete. Now it's just, who is that team they're going to compete against? Who's that offense? Who's that
Mm-hmm.
quarterback? Who's that run game that they're going against? Who will it be? But they both have what it takes to make it to the playoffs.
Well, here's something to think about. As you mentioned, Georgia. So last year, Ohio State gets beat by Michigan in the final game of the season. Michigan
Right.
physically manhandles them, but Ohio State, by virtue of the rest of the season they kind of backed their way into the playoff. They had Georgia in the semifinal, and realistically, they should have won that game, right? They were
Mm-hmm.
right there with Georgia. They could have beaten them. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of liken this Washington team to last year's Ohio State's team. So
Mm-hmm.
if they did line up against a Michigan, who knows? Maybe they could go blow for blow with them, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't beat a Georgia trying to go strength on strength, right? Which is obviously trying to run the football against them and try to attack them
Mm-hmm.
in the trenches. There's very
Mm-hmm.
few teams I think that are capable and equipped to do that. Now
Mm-hmm.
you've got a team that can go bombs away over the top, right? All you have to
Mm-hmm.
do is protect that quarterback, and he
Mm-hmm.
has to show maybe a little bit of mobility, like C.J. Stroud did in the semifinal
Mm-hmm.
last year. But just looking at it that way, it could be possible that
It
Washington,
could
if they
be.
did line up against Georgia, might have a fair opportunity to beat them.
Yeah. No, that's a great point when you put it like that. Play to your strength, essentially.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
yeah, I didn't think about it that way. That's
Yeah.
that's that's very true.
Then you look at Oregon, and we talked about ad nauseum how Dan Lanning has built them, even though they're on the West Coast, but he's built them in the image of an SEC program in terms of
That's
the,
right.
the physicality on both lines of scrimmage and running the football. Although I
Mm-hmm.
think Bucky Irvin, he's a nice little scat back. He might get broken in half against Georgia, though. I don't. I'm not so
Right,
sure he
right.
can survive that one. But either way, I think they would be great matchups, and both of those guys. But again, they've still got a long way to go in the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's clearly the best conference in college football this year. It's gonna be cool. Now, okay, okay. You know where we're going next, don't you, Ryan? You know where we're
Where
going.
where where are we going?
We are going to the capital of college football. We're going to South Bend, Indiana, under the Golden Dome.
Yep,
Another
yep.
night game, fourth straight against a ranked opponent, and this was a matchup against a top 10 program, Notre Dame versus their main rival, the USC Trojans, and obviously Caleb Williams. He was playing phenomenal this year and chasing a
Mm-hmm.
second straight Heisman. Only Archie Griffin from Ohio State has ever done that. It looks
Mm-hmm.
highly unlikely now. So this is the crazy part, right? Let me put all fandom aside. Going into the game, I think Notre Dame was favored by about 3.5. And after seeing what I saw against Louisville, after seeing Notre Dame scrape by against Duke, and then, of course, the heartbreaker against Ohio State in the 3 prior
Mm-hmm.
weeks, I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering what are the odds makers seeing that have Notre Dame favored in this game, right? Turn on the game, sit down, I watch it, and I am watching Caleb Williams play his worst game as a collegiate quarterback. I believe he
Mm-hmm.
was sacked 6 times,
Mm-hmm.
threw 3 interceptions. He's never thrown 3 interceptions in a game in college before. And I think you have to go back to like his junior year of high school to find a worse game by Caleb Williams. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
watching this thing, and Notre Dame, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, their offense was not fantastic. But again, they
Mm-hmm.
played on a lot of short fields because they forced turnovers, and they come up with a 4 touchdown win, 48-28, throttle the
Mm-hmm.
Trojans and, knock them from the ranks of the unbeaten and probably ruin Caleb Williams' Heisman chase, which I really
Mm-hmm.
loved because he won the Heisman on Notre Dame last year, if you remember, right?
Yep,
Running all
yep.
around, making these dudes look silly. But in all seriousness, just watching this game, did you expect this game to play out the way it did? Because I was totally shocked by it.
Yeah, I was shocked too. I thought it was going to be more like the Oregon game, a little bit tighter.
Okay.
I didn't think it was going to be well, is there any other games on TV right now? Type of flip around
Right,
type of
right,
thing.
right.
So I was definitely surprised by the outcome in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And so Notre Dame has had one of the better defenses in the country this year. Now,
Hmm.
and this is funny because most of the time when you think of the elite defenses, you think of having a game breaking pass rusher and
Hmm.
a really dominant defensive line. But Notre Dame doesn't really have that individual, game wrecker on the end that can come off. But they are so sound in terms of the defensive secondary. This is one of the best secondaries Notre Dame has had in decades, literally, when I say
Right,
that. And so
right.
this is a team that they're able to give their pass rushers a little extra time because they cover so well.
Hmm.
Um, as a wide receiver, would you like to have to go up against Benjamin Morrison on that corner? Because that kid's tough.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm playing college and I'm going against him, I'm looking forward to it, right? Because ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm trying to play at the next level, it's like, hey,
Yeah,
I go out here and do what I got to do.
yeah,
That helps my draft stock, right?
yeah,
And I think that's
absolutely.
how you gotta look at it that way. But I think Notre Dame played a really, really strong game. I
Mm-hmm.
think they put pressure on the quarterback, which
Yeah,
made it tough, which
right.
increased the chances for, tips and overthrows and interceptions to
Mm-hmm.
happen. So it was good to see them get after the quarterback that way. So um, but they're like you said, their defense is strong and their secondary made plays because it's a lot of times too you'll
Yeah.
see DBs having opportunities to get interceptions and they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They drop it or they knock it down.
Right.
That's a big time play when you can make an interception, make a turnover,
Mm-hmm.
get the momentum going in a big heated game like that. So it was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm watching that and I'm just like, I mean, I was, like I said, I was shocked that, I
Right,
did not expect a 28-point beatdown.
right.
And I think that also exposed a lot of things from USC. We know that it's not a great team defensively, but
Hmm.
to see now that they have issues on the offensive line as well,
Hmm.
because they allowed a team that, as I said, doesn't really have that elite
Hmm.
game wrecking pass rusher, that single guy, to get to your quarterback and sack him 6 times, especially
Hmm.
knowing the type of athleticism Caleb has, the type of mobility, his ability to throw on the run. And you and I talked about it last week in terms of even when he breaks contain, not allowing him to beat you in the scramble drill by being disciplined. I think Notre Dame did
Hmm.
an outstanding job of that. Um,
Hmm.
but let's flip it to the USC side. And this is something I wanted to really talk to you about as a guy who's
Hmm.
been there, done that, and knows it. Um, I want to talk to you a little bit about Lincoln Riley as a coach and the culture of his teams. Now, a lot of times you see, and again, you're an offensive guy, when you have an elite offensive team in terms of throwing the football and having that super quarterback play, for whatever reason, a lot of times those teams are kind of soft, right? They
Hmm.
maybe it's because you're working so much on the passing game in practice that you're not focusing on the defense. You're not focusing on running the ball, and with
Hmm.
those things come a requisite level of physicality. Is there any
Hmm.
truth to that? Do you think that this game speaks to this game and other games that
Hmm.
uh uh I'm sorry, Lincoln Riley coach teams have lost? Um, do you think that this speaks to the culture that he builds or doesn't build on his teams because they're so elite in the passing game?
You could say yes and no. I
Okay.
think it's a combination of both. I think as a coach, you got to know your personnel and what you have and what you're working with.
Mm,
So if you don't have a bruising running back and you've got
mm-hmm,
great skill positions and a quarterback who can get the ball out through quick play and play action and misdirection, well then of course you're going to kind of run with that, you know.
mm-hmm,
But at the same time, I think that those offenses are, some finesse. There's some finesse to them. There's some technicality in having receivers that can run good routes and misdirection on concepts and different things like that. So
mm-hmm.
it's a combination of knowing how to use what you have and being good at what you know what to do. And I think that he's good at calling those type of plays and being a heavy offense to get guys open and do what it takes to win games. Unfortunately, it didn't come out this way because I think Notre Dame did a good job of scripting them and kind of getting ready. And it's going to be really interesting to see who USC, when they continue to play, how those next defenses start playing against them. Because now they've got on tape a green light of, oh, look, this team, like you said, that doesn't have a great defensive line, heated up that quarterback pretty well, and they ended up winning the game. So,
Okay, so this is interesting, right? So obviously we know best quarterback in the country, USC, Caleb, got it.
mhm.
Although Michael Penix may have something to say about that, and
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and maybe Drake May out at North Carolina has something to say about it too. But
yep, yep.
regardless, here's the thing. So we know that they can throw the football. You know, Lincoln Riley's going to have weapons on the outside. He's going to have the quarterback play. But Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd, they're two running backs. Can't remember which one it is, but one of them is a top five guy in yards per carry nationally. So they could
Mm,
run the football if they wanted to do it. And this
mm-hmm.
is odd because even though Lincoln Riley is a guy who was born of air raid principles, he's always had success running the football. And I'm curious to know why it is that he's kind of gotten away from that this year. Any
Mm.
ideas on why that is?
No, no real ideas. I think he's, if I had to guess, he's letting his quarterback just kind of do his thing. And he's good at calling plays and getting the ball out of his hands. I don't really know exactly why. And I think if I knew why, I should be coaching defense somewhere because
Right,
then
right.
because then I would know, kind of what to do against him. But
Yeah.
that's part of the art of football, if you will. Like, because
Hmm.
you would think that okay, he's his tendency shown this, and that could have been something that he looked at on the off season, right? So
Hmm.
once the off season comes, you review your entire season. You got your play calls dripped out. You see everything that you've done, and then you game plan against yourself to
Right.
see what your tendencies are. And then you compare the two, and he might have said, "Oh, you know what? I might need to do more of this than instead of
Hmm.
that." So,
Right.
anything can change. You just want to keep people on their heels and be able to, come out and win games.
Absolutely. By the way, it was Marshawn Lloyd, junior running back. He's averaging 7.5 yards per carry. So they could
Still,
run it if they right. They
they
could run
could,
it if they
yeah,
wanted to.
yeah.
565 rushing yards already on the season. But
Hmm.
so be it. Before we kind of get on from this one, Zachariah Branch, true freshman, wide receiver, kick returner. I've been hearing so far this season people saying, "Man, this guy Zachariah Branch is a freak. He's the closest thing USC's had since Reggie Bush. He's a
Hmm.
guy that every time he touches the football, you hold your breath because you expect something to happen." I'm like, okay, it's a normal hyperbole. Watching this guy, he's a freak,
Elusive.
man. This
Yeah.
guy, man, he can put his foot in the ground and turn. his acceleration is nuts. He looks like he's got
Hmm.
that different kind of speed, you know?
Hmm.
What did you think of him? Obviously, did it kind of take you back being a speed guy yourself and being a freshman receiver and all that? When you look at him, what are you seeing? What does it make you think of?
Well, it's exciting to see. I mean, you love seeing good football, and then you love seeing good football from young guys. And I think that's just something that just get you fired up. Like, man,
Yeah.
you almost look at them in a developmental kind of state. Like, hey, this is the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is the beginning of what he could be. Wait till he learns this offense. Wait till
Mm-hmm.
he gets used to the college game. Wait till he starts building his confidence after having the work that he's been doing this year. So I think he's a good player. I'm excited to watch him.
Right.
And again, talking about USC and how Reggie Bush and being the electric years, like it's USC is always kind of to me known to have at least one or two guys that can really go and turn some heads. So it's cool to
Right.
see.
Right. And just so we know, obviously they just had this is a crazy stretch for USC. So they just finished with number 21 Notre Dame, well, number 21 at the time. Next
Hmm.
week or this week coming, number 14 Utah. Then following that, they got Cal. Following that, number 5 Washington. Following that, number 9 Oregon. Following that, finish out the season, number 25 UCLA. So USC is going into a nightmare stretch. Do you think they'll
Yeah,
be
that's
able to
tough.
survive that? I don't
That's
think so.
tough. That's tough. Last games are tough. Like you said, Washington, USC. I
Hmm.
mean, those are
Can't
both
wait to
tough.
see that one.
Yeah, UCLA is going to be tough just on the
Hmm.
strength of it's a rivalry game,
Yeah,
right?
and
That's
their
that's
defense is crazy this year.
exactly, and that's going to be big for them. So this is not going to be a walk in the park. And then let's
Hmm.
also not forget USC is still ranked fairly
Yeah.
high.
Hmm.
So all these teams are going to be trying to
Yeah.
you know, put their mark, put their
Hmm.
stamp. Athletes are knowing like, hey, I'm trying to go to the league. We
Yeah.
going against the number one team. People watching. Let me make sure I can make some plays.
Hmm.
So it's gonna be tight for them. It's gonna be
Yeah.
tight for them.
And I got to say, was that November 14th matchup versus Washington? You're going to tell me that Caleb Williams versus Michael Penix Jr. is not must see TV?
That's gonna be crazy.
Incredible.
That's
Incredible.
gonna be crazy.
Absolutely. All right. Before we leave this game, let's flip back to the Irish side real quick. I wanted to ask you,
Hmm.
how good is Notre Dame?
They're great. They're a real good team. They created, they gave themselves opportunities to win. And when I say that, I mean the defense was able to create turnovers, and then they were
Hmm.
able to get points after those turnovers. Right.
Hmm.
That was great. That was great. I noticed that they were, rushing Caleb and they were rushing and containing, which was nice.
Hmm.
A lot of
Yeah.
times people are rushing to make the sack. These guys are just rushing upfield to force him to step up in the pocket, and they got
Right.
somebody waiting right there for him.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
now he's thinking, all right, well, I'm not going to rush in. I'm going to just try to make a move and throw a ball up, interception. So
Right.
they know exactly what they were doing, and they game planned them well. They game planned them well.
So here's my thing with Notre Dame. It's tough for me because you often don't know what Notre Dame team you're going to get. First few games of the season, those are the tune-up games, and then obviously the fourth game was the big Ohio State matchup, and you saw the offense kind of come back to earth against a very tough team, and of course lose in heartbreaking fashion. Then they go
Mhm.
against another top 10 defense in Duke. They win that one,
Mhm.
literally in the final minute. Then they get blown out by Pitts, not blown out, but beaten badly by Louisville, which is
Mhm.
another very good team. But oddly enough, they just got beat by unranked Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So, and then of course you see Notre Dame really get up and put the beating on USC, their traditional rival. But as you
Mhm.
know very well, you can't count on getting 5 turnovers every week, right? You can play
Right.
sound defense, good defense, but you can't count on getting 5 turnovers every week. And the
Right.
offense needs to continue to develop and continue to figure out a way to make plays with a limited wide receiver room right now. Audric
Mhm.
Estime is one of the best running backs in the country, and of course they have elite left tackle play with Joe Alt. But you don't ever know what Notre Dame team you're going to get, and that's why it's tough
Mhm.
for me to say, well, this team is that or this team is this. I really don't know how good Notre Dame can be week to
Mhm.
week.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. That's fair how you mentioned that, and even when you, the first part you said of you can't, you don't know. and
Mhm.
and I feel that. Yeah, I feel that. You
Yeah,
don't know, but
yeah,
I think they have a chance to um kind of lock in on their greatness, if that makes sense. Kind of believe. I hope this USC game gives them their
yeah.
confidence that they can kind of settle and buckle down a little
Mhm.
bit and be like, hey, like we're good. We're good. Let's keep rolling. So
Right.
um yeah, we gonna see. It's gonna be if they want a shot, I think they're gonna have to win out because I think last games
Yeah.
they got is
Pitt,
Pittsburgh,
Wake Forest.
struggling, yeah, with Clemson, Wake Forest,
Mhm.
don't really gotta worry about that, and
Mhm.
Stanford, even though they win and just beat Colorado,
Right,
but
right.
those are games that they gonna need to win.
Yeah.
But just like talking about USC, those teams are gonna be going against Notre Dame, know that they're going against Notre Dame, who's
Yeah,
ranked.
yeah.
They're gonna have their antennas up to try to make a
Mhm.
play as well. So um yeah, I mean they got a chance to go, but they can't lose. I don't think they can lose.
No, I don't think they're going to make the playoff, but now they're playing for a New Year's Six bowl, and
Hmm.
I actually heard one projection saying in a New Year's Six bowl game, Notre Dame versus LSU. How crazy would
Wow.
that be, right? I guess
Wow.
we call
Yeah.
that the Brian Kelly Bowl.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that would be nuts. But hey, we'll see if and when we get there.
Hey, time
Um,
will tell.
yeah. So before I let you get out of here, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming weekend. Some big games. You've got Ohio State, Penn State, which is huge in the Big Ten.
Hmm. Hmm.
Obviously, that's all about that.
I
Duke
like
and
Penn
Florida.
State. I'll take Penn
Okay.
State. I
Now,
like to see
now
Penn State win.
that's interesting. I think that's very possible just on the fact that Penn State seems to have built their team specifically to beat Ohio State. I think they're a worse matchup against Michigan, but I think
Yeah.
specifically to beat Ohio State, Penn State has very good corners, very good linebackers. They're
Hmm.
good in the trenches. They haven't been able to run the ball as well as we've come to expect from Penn State. And
Hmm.
I don't know if it's because he's a freshman, but they seem to have kind of muzzled their quarterback a bit. He's throwing a lot of short
Hmm.
stuff. Now, maybe they're keeping a lot of stuff under the vest for Ohio State. We'll find out.
Right.
But these are
Right.
two really good defenses and two really good football teams. But if I had to make a pick here, I would pick Ohio State because James Franklin simply is not a good big game coach, at
Mm.
least not from what we've seen so far.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
yeah. Okay, so now we'll take it down south. Duke and Florida State. And Duke is far exceeding expectations this year. Obviously, everyone
Big
knows
time.
Duke as Coach K and the Cameron Crazies as a basketball school, but this is a
Yep.
really good football team here, playing outstanding top 10 defense this year. And
Hmm.
Florida State is another team that's kind of up and down to the level of their competition, but they have really good quarterback play and
Hmm.
a very good pass rusher and an elite receiver. Where are you on this one, Duke and Florida State?
I think Florida State's gonna win. I would love to see Duke win, and I
Mm-hmm.
think Duke actually can win. I think Duke has the ability to win. They're gonna have to play a very flawless game though, right?
Yeah,
They're gonna have to win the penalties,
yeah.
cannot turn the ball over, and it's gonna take one or two explosive plays, a few third downs,
Mm-hmm.
big special teams. Special teams is gonna win the game. Punt returns are gonna be huge. Just possession where they're possessing the ball. Because if you can get a returner, if their punt returner can get at least a first down every return, right? That's kind of the goal. You want to get at least 10 yards because that's
Yeah.
one less first down that the offense has to get moving forward.
That's
So
a
if they
great
can
way to
kind of,
look at it. I keep
you know what I'm
forgetting
saying?
I'm talking to an elite kick returner here. I keep forgetting that part. That's right.
Absolutely, as a
What was
returner. So,
yeah.
absolute returner, if you can just get at least 10, right? That's one less first down. And if
Mhm.
you're averaging 10 yards a return, you getting the first down every time you touch the ball. Like
Right,
that's great, you know.
right.
So if they're able to do that, that'd be awesome. But I think FSU probably will win, even though I'd
Mhm.
love to see Duke. I'd love to see Duke pull it out. I like a good
Okay.
story.
All right. And USC Utah. Now, this is going to be interesting. How does
Yeah,
Caleb Williams bounce back from his worst college game ever? How does
gotta
Lincoln
bounce
Riley
back.
have this team ready to play? This is a Utah
Hmm.
team, remember, that beat USC twice last year and beat them handily
Hmm.
in the Pac-12 champion. Was it the Pac-12
Hmm.
championship game? Uh it was either Pac-12 championship game or the game immediately preceding that. But
Right.
they Yeah, the Pac-12 championship game because they beat USC twice last year, and
Hmm.
so you're wondering, um, is USC going to kind of come in there with that chip on their shoulder, ready to take revenge, or what? Or does Utah see something? Has USC been exposed now? What are your thoughts on this game? And keep in mind, Cam Rising, Utah's quarterback, is unlikely to play. He may, but it looks unlikely.
Yeah. Well, both things are going to happen. Utah or USC is going to go in there with a chip on their shoulder. They're embarrassed that O-line's embarrassed that they gave up what 3 sacks or as many sacks as they gave
Mm-hmm.
up. Caleb's
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed that he threw the ball, turned the ball over that much. So the offense is going to be trying to be juiced up. They're probably going to be trying to go no huddle and just really just come out different, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
have some type of juice or some type of flair. Utah, like you said, with the quarterback being down, going to be tough to bounce back because USC is still USC, no matter
Right.
no matter how you slice it, right? They
Right.
still got athletes and things like that. So Utah is going to have to be on their game.
Mm-hmm.
Again, turnovers are big. Cannot turn the ball over. Got to sustain drives. Can't just be having three and out and punts
Right.
and kicking field goals and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's going to be tight. I think USC will win. But
Mm-hmm.
again, I love a good story. It would be
Yeah.
awesome to see Utah
Right.
come back. Then we'll really be talking about, all right, what's going on in USC now. But I think they should be able to handle business.
I think Utah has everything it needs to beat USC. They're physical. They can punch them in the mouth. But I got to say this as a Notre Dame fan, I got to root for USC to keep winning at this point because
Hmm.
that makes the Notre Dame win over them worth more.
Hmm.
So
There you
you
go.
can't have
That's right.
USC just fall into the toilet at this
Follow
point.
up, yeah, then it's like, oh, that was no big deal. They lost to Utah the next
Right.
week too.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
they sorry. They sorry. Oh, you beat up on a sorry team. Nah, don't need that. Don't need
That's
that.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
All right, Ryan. Well, listen, man. Thank you for joining us again this week. As always, completely appreciate it, man. You always giving us that great college football talk, and I really appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And for all of you listening and watching, if you haven't already, you're here on YouTube, please make sure you go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell. And if you want the audio only version of the podcast, look for the show, The Format Podcast, in your audio podcast platform. Leave us a comment, leave us a like, leave us a subscribe. We appreciate it. And I'll be back with you next episode. And I'm out. Peace.